Right before Christmas, I heard my mother-in-law's voice coming from upstairs. Clear, clipped, like she was directing a stage play. Dr. Harlan already signed. Just present the evaluation at the right moment, and everyone will believe it. I stood behind the door, quietly stepped away. This Christmas, the one losing her mind won't be me. Before we go on, hit subscribe and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I'd love to send a hello to your hometown. The client meeting ended 40 minutes early. I drove home at 3:15 instead of 5, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment replaying today's conversation, reminding myself not to overlook a single detail. I unlocked the back door, passed through the laundry room, kicked off my shoes out of habit. Evelyn hated dust on the hardwood floor, even though I was the only one who ever cleaned it. Her voice came from upstairs, from my home office. Evelyn's laugh came first, the one she only used when she liked an idea. Then Noah's voice, deeper. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, hand resting on the walnut banister. I had refinished it myself when we bought the house. Evelyn's voice sharpened. Harlan already signed everything. The evaluation confirms severe emotional instability. Christmas, perfect timing. My hand clenched the wood. Noah replied, echoing through the quiet house. And the property transfer. Once she's declared mentally unfit, I have full control. $780 grand. Pays off the debt. Fresh start blood drained from my face. The cold settled in my chest like a stone. Evelyn continued, light as if she were talking about dinner. She suspects nothing. In 2 weeks, the house will be in your name. I didn't move. My designer's brain, trained to assess load-bearing points, ratios, structural stress, now applied those same principles. They were planning to steal everything. The home I bought with my own savings 5 years before we got married. The independence I'd protected for 3 years of marriage. My dignity. Footsteps crossed the floor upstairs. I backed away, one measured step at a time, through the laundry room, into the garage. I got in the car, shut the door, stared at the steering wheel until my breath steadied. 20 minutes, maybe an hour. I used to think they liked me, the dutiful daughter-in-law, the wife who kept everything running smoothly. Turns out, to them, I was just an obstacle between them and my home. I didn't cry. Not a sound, not a tear. I just happened to rest my hand on the car, then stepped out onto the porch. Cold, dry, with sunset streaking across the window glass. If they wanted to paint me as the crazy one, I'd let them believe it, at least until they signed their own trap. I took a long breath, then went back inside, made dinner like usual, rinsed the wine glasses, laid out the napkins neatly, smiled as Evelyn talked about how cranberry sauce made the table look festive. Noah kissed my cheek like everything was normal. I responded, voice soft and calm, as if I hadn't heard a word of what they said. But inside, every vein in me was pulling tight. Night fell, and they slept soundly across the hall, the hum of the heater syncing with their breaths. 2 people fully confident in their little scheme. I threw on a coat, barefoot down the hall, into the office, warm yellow light spilling onto the wood floor. The papers on the desk were stacked just right. I started going through every pile. Then I saw it, a thin page with Harlan Clinic's logo in the corner. Next to it, Evelyn's slanted handwriting, complete. Submit before December 25th. The lies were calculated, cold and methodical. I sat on the floor in silence. I don't know how long I was there. Long enough for my legs to go numb. Long enough for the pain to freeze into something sharper, something useful. At 2 a.m., I got up, folded the documents carefully, and tucked them into my coat pocket. That night, in the house they believed was theirs, I began redesigning my first space, not with color or material, but with a plan for my freedom. My designer's brain worked through the night, analyzing, measuring, drafting solutions like I used to map out interior layouts. I pulled out a fresh notebook and started listing assets, weaknesses, timeline. The house, my house, valued at $780,000. Evelyn and Noah had been living there rent-free, not a cent in rent. They planned to take it all. The safe in the closet held real weapons. I spun the dial, my mother's birthday, untouched for 3 years since she passed, and took out the documents. Deed to the house she left me, in my name only, bank statements, the real will. Everything Evelyn and Noah had probably copied during their 3 unrestricted years of access. They had time to prepare. That was clear. I laid everything out, cross-checking it against the forged evaluation. They had medical records from Harlan, maybe lined-up witnesses, legal paperwork likely ready to go. This wasn't impulsive. It was calculated, systematic, almost professional. And my design instincts kicked in exactly when they needed to. Every problem has a solution. Every structure has a weakness. If they wanted the house, I would remove the house from the equation. Simple. Sell it before they could lay a hand on it. I sat in front of the screen, typing the words, "Procedure to determine legal incapacity in Arizona." The results loaded slowly. The internet in the suburbs was still terrible, as always. On average, it took 2 to 3 weeks from the filing to the hearing. They picked Christmas to strike, which meant I had at most 8 days, maybe less if the petition had already been filed and I hadn't received notice yet. 3 years of living together, I paid every bill, maintained the house, prepared every dinner, and this was their gratitude. I stared at the forged report still lying on the desk, silent for a few seconds. Fine, they wanted to play legal games. I knew the law, too. I'd spent my life designing structures. I knew how to build one and how to make it collapse. I opened my notebook and wrote the title, 8-Day Plan. Objective: strip them of all financial control before they could act. 8 days to sell a house. Insane, maybe impossible. But I'd done impossible things before. At 8 a.m., I made the first call. To a notary office in Phoenix. The woman's voice on the other end was young and brisk. I said I needed to confirm ownership and requested an urgent same-day appointment. She said there was one slot left at 11. I took it immediately. Then I photographed the forged report, uploaded it to an encrypted cloud folder. I placed the original back on my husband's desk. They couldn't know I had found it. Evelyn left the living room at 9, and Noah right after. He didn't notice that his wife hadn't slept beside him that night. I had made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with the newspaper spread out, the picture of normalcy. Mother-in-law checking in. Are you all right? You look tired. I looked up at Evelyn, making sure my fatigue looked just believable. Client canceled early? Nothing serious. You two have plans today? Noah squinted at me. You sure you're okay? You seem different. I gave him a flat smile. Just thinking about Thanksgiving? Big family dinner. It'll be memorable. Noah left at 9:30. His truck rumbled down the street. My mother-in-law went off to her social group, reminding me before she left that her red Christmas dress needed to be hand-washed. I watched through the window until she turned the corner, then grabbed the documents and drove to Phoenix. The notary office was inside a shopping complex. Lacey Hayes met me in a small conference room. Gray suit, professional, around 40. She reviewed the property deed carefully. Ms. Gray, these papers show you're the sole owner. You have full rights to sell, but the timing is tight. She looked up. May I ask what's the urgency? I chose my words carefully. Said I knew my living situation was about to change. I wanted control over that change. Her expression shifted, worry flickering through her professional calm. If someone's pressuring you... No one is, I cut in, voice firmer than intended. I'm making a choice. The paperwork was processed quickly. Next stop, a small law office on the second floor of an old brick building, quiet and smelling of paper. Harper Reed, the attorney I'd searched for, was younger than I expected, around 40, slender, sharp eyes behind rimless glasses. I spread the photocopy of the forged psychological report on her desk. She read in silence, her face darkening with each page. When she reached Dr. Harlan's signature, she looked up. He doesn't hold a clinical psychology license. If this document is used against you, it's a criminal medical forgery. I asked directly, "What should I do then?" Harper replied instantly, steady voice. "Withdraw all personal assets today. Freeze every joint account. Draft a limited power of attorney so I can act if they move faster than expected. And if they're after the house, sell it before they strike." I nodded. She opened her laptop, checked court filings, then said, "Nothing's been filed yet. They plan to wait until after Christmas to declare it. So you've got about 10 days." I looked out the window, the midday light glinting off the glass table, and murmured, 10 days to dismantle the trap they built. Harper handed me a folder. Limited power of attorney, new bank account forms. "Can you refer a real estate agent who's fast and discreet?" She studied me for a long moment, then slowly nodded, pulling a business card from her drawer. "Cole Jenkins, best in Scottsdale for fast, quiet sales. Tell him I sent you." I held the card, felt its weight, the raised lettering, the texture. In the car, sitting in the parking lot, I stared at my phone. 8 days. I dialed. 1 ring, 2 rings. His voice was low, steady, the kind of voice of someone used to handling urgent transfers. I spoke plainly. "I need to sell my house before Christmas. Everything must be quick, under the radar." He paused, then replied, "If you want it discreet and fast, I have a buyer ready. But are you sure? Can I send someone to inspect the property?" "Absolutely." He gave a small chuckle. "All right, then. I'll take care of the rest." The call ended, and for the first time in hours, my hands stopped trembling. I sat in the parking lot outside Harper Reed's office, looking at the card she'd given me. "State attorney," the note said. "Someone who understood urgency." The car clock read 3:40. Evelyn and Noah weren't home yet. I had 2 hours left. Enough time. I drove to the Chase branch in Mesa, 2 towns over, where no one knew me. The branch manager helped open a new account, arranged for the funds from the house sale to be transferred, and ensured Noah's name appeared nowhere. I signed everything carefully, calmly, like I was signing off on a final design. When I got home, the clock read 5 p.m. Everything looked the same. When Noah pulled into the driveway at 5:15, nothing seemed out of place. My car was parked in its usual spot. He walked through the front door, called out, "I'm home," like always, and hung his keys on the usual hook. I stepped out from the kitchen. "Where were you this afternoon?" Mom called nonstop, he asked, watching me. I'd rehearsed. "Phone died." I was at the library, then just drove around, thinking about the Thanksgiving menu. "Still want the turkey here, right?" "Mom's inviting guests this year." "Of course." She's invited the Hendersons, the Morales family, about 10 people. "You don't mind, right?" "No, I like a full house during the holidays." I paused, letting the weight of memory settle between us. "Let's make it a real celebration." He smiled, stepped forward, hugged me. "We will. It's going to be a memorable day," he said. Yes, memorable, just not in the way he imagined. That night, I lay in bed, listening to whispers through the wall. Planning. Always planning. My phone buzzed. A message from Cole Jenkins. "House showing tomorrow, 10 a.m. Buyer's lawyer drafting the contract. Need your signature before noon." I typed, "I'll be there," deleted the message, deleted the whole thread, stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, the house goes on the market. Tomorrow, their plan begins to fall apart, but they don't know it yet. Not yet. Footsteps in the hallway. Evelyn passed my door, probably checking if the lights were off. I shut my eyes, breathed evenly, steadily. The next morning, I didn't need an alarm. I hadn't slept all night, just lay there listening to the clock and the wind brushing against the roof. At 8 a.m., the sound of running water from Evelyn's bathroom echoed. Everything still appeared normal. Noah played music while shaving. A perfect morning for them to believe nothing was off. I picked a simple dress, tied my hair back neatly, brewed coffee like any other day. But inside, every plan was ready to go. At 10 a.m., I met Cole Jenkins at a small cafe a few blocks from the house. He handed me the purchase contract. The buyer was an investor from California, offering the full $780,000. I signed each page. Every signature was like slicing through another thread tying me down. After that, I went to the bank and moved all the funds into a private account. When the banker asked, "Would you like a copy?" I just smiled. No need. One copy is enough. I drove 2 blocks away, waited 15 more minutes, then came back. Evelyn was in my office when I walked in. She was rummaging through the desk drawer and flinched when she heard me. "Oh, Olivia! I didn't hear you come in. I was just—" She waved vaguely at the desk. "The Thanksgiving invitations need stamps. I thought you might have kept them here." I noticed the papers shift slightly. "They're in the file cabinet," I said. "In the living room. 3rd drawer from the bottom, same as always." "Don't you remember?" I watched her closely. "Were you looking for something else?" "You seem tense." She forced a laugh. "No, just busy." "Lots to plan." She rushed out like she was escaping. I heard her in the living room, opening drawers just for show. Noah got home at 6. Found me reading the paper in the living room. "Where were you all day?" "Mom said you vanished for hours." "Downtown, bank. Lunch with Sophie Klein." "Remember Sophie from that old design project?" I said, flipping the page calmly. I saw him quietly mouth the name, Sophie Klein, probably planning to fact-check. Let him. I was prepared for everything. That evening, I sat in the kitchen, listening to Evelyn laugh on the phone. I stirred my tea in silence, letting the scent of mint rise into the air. My phone buzzed. A message from Cole. "Closing confirmed, 2 p.m. Wednesday." I looked at it, then deleted it immediately. 2 p.m. Wednesday, this house would no longer belong to them. That night, Evelyn passed by the hallway, paused outside my door, gently knocked. "Sweet daughter-in-law, don't forget to make mashed potatoes this Christmas. Noah loves that dish." I replied softly, "Yes, I'll remember." The door closed, and I smiled. In the next room, they were laughing, chatting about their plan to have me evaluated on Friday. I opened my laptop, checked the transfer. $780,000 had landed in the new account. Fully clean, fully mine. On the other side of the wall, they were dreaming about a house they thought would soon be theirs. As for me, I was just waiting for Wednesday, the day everything would end, cleanly, legally, and irreversibly. Christmas. I looked at the clock, 5:47 a.m. Evelyn and Noah wouldn't be up before 8. Plenty of time. The suitcase was lighter than I thought. Neat, organized, packed only with clothes, documents, and some cash. I walked down the stairs, paused at the bottom step, listening to the house breathe quietly. Every creak was familiar. The wooden steps I'd polished by hand, the window where the first morning light used to fall on my desk. I stepped into the office, the room Evelyn had been secretly searching all week. Opened the right-hand drawer and placed a white envelope inside. On the outside, I wrote clearly, "Noah, read this." Inside was the notarized contract for the house sale, along with a letter I wrote at dawn. "You wanted documents? Here's the only one that matters. The house has been sold, which means it no longer belongs to me. Merry Christmas. Enjoy what's left of your broken scheme." I took photos of everything, uploaded them to the cloud, proof of absolute clarity. At 6:15, I loaded the suitcase into the trunk, started the engine, took one last look at the house. The porch light I'd left on from the night before still cast a glow across the lawn. I reversed out, didn't look back. Phoenix was still half asleep when I arrived at the hotel. The receptionist smiled brightly and asked, "Traveling early for work?" I replied quietly, "Not exactly. I'm just leaving at the right time." She didn't understand, but nodded anyway. I paid in cash for 3 nights. The room was small, overlooking the city. I hung up my clothes, laid out my documents, placed my phone and laptop on the desk. Harper, Cole, and the bank account were all set. At 9, I called. "Harper, it's done." "The letter's in the drawer," she answered, voice calm but warm. "Good. Now we wait." I looked out over the Phoenix skyline. For the first time in 3 years, I was in control of my life. The morning passed slowly. I sat by the window. By noon, I checked my phone. I knew it was coming. The call, the discovery, the explosion. Part of me wanted to turn it off, disappear completely. But no, I needed to hear it. Hear the moment he realized everything he plotted had fallen apart. My finger hovered over the power button, then pulled back. Let it ring. Let him panic. Let him feel what betrayal feels like from the other side. 2:03 p.m. The phone lit up. I let it ring 4 times before picking up. My husband. "Where have you been all morning?" "The guests are arriving." "The Hendersons just got here. Everyone's asking about you." "I'm exactly where I need to be. Away from you, Noah." His voice jumped, panicked. "What? Honey, this isn't funny." I looked at the city glowing under sunlight and answered slowly, "Noah, check the office drawer. Right side." Silence for a few seconds. Then the sound of rushed footsteps, a drawer opening, paper rustling. I pictured the moment he pulled out the envelope, his eyes reading line by line, and the scream that shattered like glass. "She sold it! She sold the house! Just days ago!" I held the phone away, recording the entire call. Chaotic noise, Noah yelling, Evelyn's voice shaking with rage. "What the hell did you do?" "What did you sell, Olivia? Get back here now." Madness. I switched to speaker, placed the iPad close, kept recording, capturing everything. What I did was protect property from thieves. The house sold Wednesday. Escrow closed. Money's in my account. It's done. He shouted back. "Done? You think you can just— You've been manipulated. Someone's using you. We'll prove you're unstable. We were happy, and you disappear at Christmas, saying you sold the house?" I almost laughed. Bitter. "You can try." I've got 3 independent psych evaluations, signed and dated, proving I'm fully competent. Dr. Harlan isn't a licensed clinical psychologist, and falsifying medical records is a felony. You know that, right? A long silence. I could hear his shallow breathing through the phone. Evelyn's voice rang out. You can't do this to my son." I smiled, watching the sunlight shift across the glass buildings. "I didn't do anything, Mother. I just protected what's mine. Merry Christmas." Then I hung up, saved the recording, and set the phone on the table. Outside, the city was still peaceful. Inside that house, everything had just collapsed. At 5 p.m., Harper called. "Evelyn just filed an emergency petition, claiming you're mentally incompetent and the house sale was fraudulent. They're asking the court to freeze the assets." I gave a slight smile. "I expected that." Harper replied. "So did I. We already have enough evidence." I opened my laptop, audio recordings, psychological evaluations. The forged documents all appeared. 3 independent psychological assessments, phone call recordings, copies of the guardianship petition they plan to submit. Everything's ready. Harper spoke slowly, her voice low but firm. "They're spinning a story. The devoted husband trying to protect his unstable wife. Some judges are sympathetic to that narrative," I answered. "Then let them hear the rest. The freeloading, the fake documents, and the scheme to steal. Once the light hits it, there's nothing devoted about it." Harper was silent for a moment, then said, "Prepare for the worst before it gets better." "They're desperate," I just smiled. "Good, I'm not prey anymore." That night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Evelyn's voice came through, cold and sharp. "Come home! You're sick. In court, Everything will be reversed, and my son will become your legal guardian. We're still family. I kept my voice calm. See you in court, Evelyn. I blocked the number, stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. They could file as many motions as they wanted. The truth was still on my side. 2 days later, Harper emailed, "Emergency petition denied." No evidence of mental decline. I read the message, then closed my eyes. One victory, but they weren't done. They hired Marcus Webb, a lawyer known for dirty courtroom tactics. I agreed to undergo the court-ordered evaluation, not out of fear, but to end this once and for all. In January, I completed 3 separate independent assessments, all confirming I was fully sound. Meanwhile, Evelyn spread rumors that I stole my mother-in-law's jewelry. 2 days later, the police knocked. I showed them old photos, insurance policies, receipts. Everything legal, all mine. 48 hours later, the case was closed. No evidence of theft. I looked at the closure notice and laughed. When you have proof, the truth doesn't need to scream. On January 15th, I arrived at the court's forensic center. 6 hours of in-depth psychological evaluation, from memory to decision-making capacity. At the end, the doctor concluded, logical reasoning exceeds standards, behavior fully stable, decision to sell assets was deliberate and legal. When Harper read the report aloud, she looked up and smiled. You just tore their entire case apart. The judge will dismiss it. Don't worry, Harper said firmly. There's nothing left to dispute. I nodded slightly. Good. Now it's our turn to strike back. I want them to pay back every dollar from the 3 years they lived rent-free in my house, $48,000, and another $50,000 for my dignity, for the slander, for the sleepless nights. Harper hesitated. Are you sure? With that amount, they're nearly bankrupt. I answered coldly, even better. They tried to steal my life, now they'll pay. In cash, the hearing was swift. Judge Hayes read the ruling with a tired expression. After reviewing the findings from Dr. Mitchell, the court finds no indication of mental incompetence. The defendant's actions were a reasonable response to a direct threat. The petition is dismissed. Attorney Marcus Webb tried to stand and object, but the judge raised a hand. Mr. Webb, your client has wasted this court's time with baseless accusations. Sit down before I consider sanctions for abuse of process. The hearing ended cleanly. I stepped into the hallway, and Harper opened her briefcase, handed me a set of papers. Our countersuit plan. Civil claim for damages and unpaid housing expenses, along with evidence of forged medical records. I looked down at the page and said coldly, let's begin. Not long after, Evelyn spread rumors that I had threatened her by phone, claiming I made 17 calls in 2 weeks and left death threats. They wanted a restraining order, wanted to flip the narrative. The police called, asking me to come in. Harper came with me. In the interview room, a female officer opened the file. You've been accused of making threatening calls to your mother-in-law. Harper slid a thick folder across the table. Certified call logs from AT&T. There were no calls, no texts, no contact whatsoever since December 27th. The officer flipped through them, her expression shifting from suspicion to frustration. She claimed 17 calls on January 8th, 9th, and 12th, but your phone shows 0 activity those days. Harper said coldly, this is her 3rd fabrication. The first about mental illness, the second about theft, and now this. You should flag this as a pattern of false reporting. The officer closed the file. This ends here. I can't stand people who use the police for personal revenge. 3 hours later, the case was closed. Ruling. False accusation, no evidence, no charges filed. Harper requested a copy to attach to the civil countersuit, proof of a consistent defamation pattern. I only said one thing. Good. That's enough. Now it's time the court makes them pay every cent. On February 15th, Harper officially filed the civil countersuit with Maricopa Court. It demanded $98,000 in damages, $48,000 for unpaid rent over 3 years, and $50,000 for reputational harm, along with a motion to refer the forged medical record to the criminal division. 2 weeks later, Noah was served and went pale. He called me, voice desperate. "We both made mistakes. You sold the house. It's over. Please don't sue. I only have $20,000 left. Take it. Let's end this." I pressed record and replied calmly, "You thought you'd walk away with $780,000. Now you think $20,000 is a deal?" "I don't need pity money. I need justice." He went silent. On March 15th, at the hearing, I sat beside Harper, with a full timeline laid out in front of us. 3 years of scheming, forged documents, recordings, psych evaluations, police reports. Judge Morrison reviewed everything, then brought the gavel down. The defendant's conduct constitutes fraud, defamation, and a serious violation of ethical and legal standards. The court orders defendants Evelyn Thompson and Noah Thompson to jointly pay $98,000 in damages and refers the matter of medical record forgery to the criminal authorities for investigation. The room fell silent. "The hearing is adjourned." The judge struck the gavel, voice cold. Evelyn stood up, trembling, her face pale. "Your Honor, we don't have the money to pay." "Then arrange a payment plan or wait for asset seizure. You should have thought of that before forging documents," the judge interrupted, closing the file. In the hallway, Harper and I stood by the glass door. Through the thick glass, I saw Evelyn and Noah arguing intensely, mouths open wide, but I couldn't hear a sound. Marcus Webb, their lawyer, stood a few steps away, glanced at them, then turned and walked off, leaving them in the hallway like two defeated players. Harper whispered, "They'll go bankrupt." "You probably won't see a cent of the $98,000, I smiled. "I don't need the money. I needed them to lose, completely." She nodded. "And they did." I looked through the glass as Evelyn collapsed onto a bench, her face crumpled with tears. "They once tried to destroy me, with smiles, with forged signatures. I just did the same. But with the law outside, the March wind was still cold, carrying the dampness of winter. I stood on the courthouse steps, the same place I stood months ago when I got that false accusation call. Now, in my hand was a victory ruling, $98,000 they couldn't pay. Harper rested a hand on my shoulder. "You've won completely, but they're not done yet. There's still bankruptcy, still a criminal investigation. They'll be stuck in that mud for years." My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, a photo of the old house, a "for sale" sign stuck in the yard, and the words beneath, "We lost everything. Hope you're satisfied." "This isn't over." I showed it to Harper, and she frowned. "Sounds like a threat." I deleted the message and said quietly, "They can threaten all they want. There's nothing left in them that can hurt me." I turned and walked down the courthouse steps. "Where are you going?" Harper asked. "My marriage is over. I'm going somewhere quiet." I didn't look back. The war was over. It was time to rebuild. April came with a light so sharp it felt cruel. I sat in a small rental apartment in Sedona, 1 bedroom, a view of the Red Mountains. Harper sent me their bankruptcy papers. Almost no assets left. My $98,000 ruling sat at the top of the creditor list like a tombstone. I texted Harper, "Don't fight it, let them sink." She replied, "You'll only recover a few $100s." I wrote back, "That's fine." I never did it for the money. Mid-April, another email arrived. Noah's consulting firm had collapsed. Clients had checked public records, saw his name tied to fraud, all contracts canceled. "Seeking new opportunities," his LinkedIn headline, meant he was unemployed. By June, Harper sent more updates. They were 3 months behind on rent, facing eviction. At the end of May, I received my first check from the bankruptcy court, $147. I framed it and hung it on the wall, not for the money, but because it proved they had to pay. In July, I received 2 more payments, less than $300 total, and each time, I donated the exact amount to the foundation for the protection of women from psychological abuse. I wanted to turn their debt into something good, to end this properly. At the end of June, an envelope forwarded from the Phoenix Hotel arrived in Sedona. Noah's handwriting, shaky, no longer confident. He wrote that his mother had lied to him, abandoned him, that he had no house, no money. He sent me an apology. I read it once, then fed it straight into the shredder. The paper turned to soft fragments, light as ash. A few days later, Noah called, asking for forgiveness, saying they'd been under pressure, that it was all a misunderstanding. I hung up and blocked the number. Forgiveness is a luxury they no longer qualify for. Mid-July, I signed the purchase contract for a small house on the west side of Sedona. 2 bedrooms, a small garden, a mountain view. No big living room, no space for guests. Just enough for one person. And peace. Harper called and said their lawyer accused me of being cruel, of destroying their lives. I laughed. I just used the law properly. They destroyed themselves with forgery. I merely recorded the outcome outside the window. The sun was setting behind the red mountains, painting the sky with peace. I opened my email. A message from the real estate agent. "Congratulations, your home purchase has been approved." I leaned back in my chair and sat in silence for a long time. Finally, after everything, there was only me, a small house, and the peace I paid for with the price of a family. The phone buzzed. I picked up. Harper's voice came through. "The prosecutor's office just approved the charges. Falsifying medical records and conspiracy to commit property fraud. Noah's being indicted." I stayed silent, looking at the sky, darkening slowly, feeling justice still unfolding, pieces of consequence still falling into place. 2 days later, I stood in the living room of my new house, sunset pouring red across the bare walls. Just a few boxes, an air mattress, and the sound of wind passing through the open frame. My phone sat still on the windowsill, the first time there were no messages from them. I thought everything was over. Then the phone buzzed. Notification from the bank. $2,400 transferred from Evelyn. Note. Sold the car. Please forgive me, I stared at the screen, unmoved. 10 minutes later, I forwarded the entire amount to the Women's Protection Fund. The house slowly began to carry a new warmth. I hung the old photo of my birth parents back on the wall, the glass frame chipped, but still shining, the only photo left from a peaceful time. Every picture of my husband and his family I had already thrown away, without regret. In the small office, I reorganized the files, cleared drawers, each motion like wiping away a former version of life. That afternoon, I stepped out onto the balcony, holding the very first forged health document, the one I'd kept since leaving the old house. I looked at it one last time, then tore it to pieces and let them fall into the canyon behind the house. The fragments, white like paper petals, glinted for a second in the sunset, then vanished among the red rocks. I stood there for a long while, letting the dry Sedona wind brush across my skin like a final severing ritual. I was no longer tethered to the past. Only me, this house, and the absolute quiet remained. Late that night, one final message appeared. "You're my wife. You're all I have left." I read every word carefully, my fingers sliding across the keyboard. "You have exactly what you built. So do I. The difference is, I built mine with the truth. Sent." Then I blocked the number, powered the phone off. All sound went silent. I leaned on the railing, watching the mountains darken into the night. From somewhere deep inside, no anger, no affection left, just a calm, weightless emptiness. That night, I finished unpacking, folded clothes into the wardrobe, plates onto the shelves, switched on the new security system. The doors locked, the codes changed. No one but me could enter. I stood in the empty living room, the light reflecting in the glass pane, showing the face of a woman who was once seen as a victim, now the architect of her own life. Free, safe, untouchable. Tomorrow, I'd keep unpacking, set up my workspace, then walk along Sedona's trails. The life ahead of me, a new blueprint. I no longer live to fight anyone, but to rebuild myself. And this time, every single brick is named truth. If you've ever been told you're not strong enough, tell your story. Hit subscribe to follow the journeys of those who reclaim their voice and turned their pain into power. After the animal rescue mission from the California wildfire, I flew home earlier than planned, without telling my husband, to cook an anniversary dinner for our 8th wedding year. I tiptoed step by step toward the living room window, only to suddenly hear my husband's best friend's young child call him Daddy, while the child's mother kissed my husband and said, "Michael, you really are a wonderful father." That scene left me frozen in place. They were celebrating the birthday of a child unrelated to me, in the very house I paid for. I quietly recorded a video and left. The next morning, my husband came to my workplace and yelled, "What horrible things you did last night." My name is Michelle, 35 years old, a veterinarian and owner of Harbor Light Animal Clinic in Cambridge, Boston. After nearly 3 consecutive weeks in California, helping rescue animals injured in the wildfires, the mission ended 3 days earlier than expected, and I decided to fly home that very afternoon. I booked a noon flight from San Francisco to Boston, set to arrive early in the evening. I wanted to be home before Michael could find out, to prepare dinner for our 8th wedding anniversary. I paid extra to upgrade to business class, just to come home a bit sooner, just to see his smile when I stepped through the door with a small gift in hand. Throughout the flight, I thought of him, of his favorite dinner, the red stew I learned to cook just for him, of the burgundy bottle we'd been saving for a special occasion. I pictured him opening the door, surprised, then smiling. In my suitcase was a special gift, a silver necklace engraved with a wolf's paw, symbolizing loyalty, which I picked out after a successful surgery on an injured old dog in California. I believed it would be the perfect gift for a perfect anniversary. But life is rarely as perfect as we imagine. When the Uber dropped me off in front of our quiet neighborhood in Cambridge, I saw a silver sedan parked outside the house. That car, disturbingly familiar. I looked through the window and felt my chest tighten. It was Tiffany's Honda, Michael's close colleague and friend, a 3rd-grade teacher at the nearby elementary school. I remembered clearly, just yesterday morning, Tiffany had posted on Instagram that she'd be attending a 3-day teacher conference in Worcester. So why was she here, while I hadn't even returned home yet? A cold intuition made me ask the driver to drop me off at the end of the street. I quietly walked to the house, carrying the small gift box. The closer I got, the clearer the voices and laughter from inside became. Warm, intimate, familiar, but not meant for me. Through the slightly open door, I saw Michael blowing out candles with a little girl. The child called him Daddy, in a voice so innocent and bright, and he smiled, lifted her into his arms, kissed her hair, and said in that sweet voice I once believed was meant only for me, "Daddy's here, sweetheart." I stood frozen. The air around me felt frozen too. The gift box nearly slipped from my hand. I caught it with the other. I saw Tiffany, in a light blue floral dress, standing next to him, her gaze tender and intimate in a way that needed no explanation. On the table was a birthday cake with the words, "Happy Birthday, Lisa." And Lisa was Tiffany's 3-year-old daughter, the one I'd once noted had the same blue eyes as my husband. I used to think they were just close friends, that Michael was only helping Tiffany because she was a single mom. But now, hearing Daddy again, I understood everything. That child was calling my husband her father. I stepped back, then again, trying not to let anyone hear my broken breathing. I turned and hurried to the gate, heart pounding like it would explode. I don't remember calling the Uber, only that I sat inside it, headed to my clinic, moving on instinct. When I arrived, I sat in silence in the empty room. The white light reflected on the walls. The sterilizer machine hummed steadily, like the heartbeat of someone barely alive. I opened my phone, went on Facebook, scrolled through Tiffany's posts. There were photos of Lisa learning to talk. Tiffany wrote, "She just said, 'Mama!' She's so adorable beneath it," Michael had commented. "She's adorable like her mom." I had once scrolled past it without a hint of doubt. Now, all the pieces fit. Looking back at the timeline, I realized Lisa was born 4 years ago. The same time Michael often came home late, sometimes 1 or 2 in the morning, sometimes not at all, texting, "Tiffany's not okay. She just broke up. I'm afraid she might do something reckless." I used to think he was kind, compassionate. I was touched by my husband's empathy. But perhaps, back then, kindness had already become betrayal. I once believed our marriage was built on honesty, but now I see. Michael had betrayed me with the woman he called his best friend. I don't hate Tiffany the way I hate him. To me, she's just a lonely woman who went too far. But Michael, the man I once called my soulmate, he's the one who stabbed me with the very trust I gave him. I opened the notebook on my desk. The first page still had a list of vaccines for cats. I turned to a new page, picked up my pen, and wrote the first line. If loyalty had a shape, then today it shattered. I looked up, out the window where the early winter rain had started to fall. In that moment, I knew I would not let this pain pass like a memory. I would strike back, and I would reclaim justice for myself. Out there, Boston's lights were flickering on, but inside me, nothing was clear. I knew I had just witnessed something unforgivable, but I couldn't let him know I knew. I needed the truth, needed evidence, not just emotions. I picked up my phone, opened the chat with Michael, and tried to sound as normal as possible. The rescue ended earlier than expected, but I might have to stay a few more days to wrap things up. If I finish early, I'll catch the red-eye flight home, message sent. My heart thudded. Just 15 seconds later, he replied, "That's great news. I miss you so much. Once you've rested, let's do a belated anniversary dinner." I looked at the screen, a bitter smile creeping onto my face. He was still playing the perfect husband, as if last night he hadn't laughed with another child in this very house. The next morning, I returned home in silence. Michael had already left. On the kitchen counter were 2 mugs, his usual coffee, and another with a faint lipstick mark. I looked around. Nothing was messy. Everything was too perfect, too clean, like my life had been erased from it. I opened the drawer where he usually kept his wallet and car keys. A small piece of paper stuck out. I pulled it free. A folded receipt. Teddy's Toy Emporium, white wool stuffed teddy bear, $127, September 12th. September 12th. He had told me he was in New York meeting investors. I remember he video called me, smiling, saying, "I miss you." My hand shook. There was no more doubt. I sat down, opened my laptop. The screen cast a cold blue light on my face. I created a new document, typed 3 words in all caps, "Justice Plan." I snapped a photo of the receipt, saved it into the first folder, named Day of Betrayal 1. Then I opened my notes and listed every detail. Tiffany's license plate, Michael's work hours, the late-night meetings he claimed were urgent. One by one, the puzzle pieces began falling into place. At 10:55 a.m., a loyal client came in with her elderly cat. Mrs. Whitmore, a retired lawyer I deeply respect. As I administered the shot, she looked at me and said softly but firmly, "My dear, your eyes say more than you realize. Something's wrong, isn't it?" I smiled, trying to cover it up. "No, just a bit tired." She nodded slowly and said, "Women only say tired when they're holding it all in. If you suspect someone, don't confront them without proof. Justice always sides with the patient." I stuck to the plan, not letting him know I was in Boston. At 3 p.m., just after finishing a minor surgery at the clinic, I texted Michael, keeping the tone of a wife still far away. "I'm wrapping up paperwork here in California. Might be a late one. How have things been at home?" He called back immediately. His voice was warm and familiar, so much so that if I hadn't known better, I might have believed him again. "Everything's fine. Don't worry about a thing. I've just been busy with work stuff. Oh, and I stopped by Tiffany's last night. She's not doing great again." I gripped the phone tightly. Last night was the night I stood outside the door, hearing a child call him Daddy. 1,000 questions burned in my throat, but I swallowed them down, letting out only a measured touch. "You and Tiffany. Is there something going on that makes you go over there so often?" He paused for a beat, then let out a perfectly crafted sigh, laced with wounded sincerity. "Are you doubting me, Michelle? You know Tiffany once had suicidal thoughts after her breakup. I just don't want her doing anything drastic. I thought you understood my heart." I let the silence linger, listening to the low hum of the air conditioner through the line like it was reminding me to stay calm. Then I spoke, slow and dry. "I'm not doubting. I'm just asking. If you're truly just helping, then that's good." "Thank you for trusting me," he said softly. "Come home. We'll talk things through. I love you." The call ended. I stared at the dark screen, my chest tight and hollow. Was I angry? Yes. But more terrifying was that I no longer wanted to argue. Not yet. Not without proof. That night, alone in the clinic office, I opened our joint bank app and reviewed recent transactions. The words appeared like a black ink stain. Transfer, $2,000. Recipient, Tiffany M. Note: Take care, birthday. 2041. I leaned back in my chair, hearing my heartbeat in every harsh thud. 8:41 p.m. Right after that call with me, he sent her money, with a note that read, "Take care." I screenshot the transfer and saved it to the Justice Plan folder. Transfer 2000 Tiffany 2041 PNG. I reopened the photo of Tiffany's silver car outside the house and added it to the evidence log. The pieces were falling into place. I searched my contacts for Mildred Harper, divorce attorney, a former client who once brought in her beagle for vaccines. I typed a quick email, attaching the teddy bear receipt and the screenshot. "Dear Mildred, this is Michelle from Harbor Light Animal Clinic. I urgently need legal consultation regarding marriage and finances, possible infidelity, transfers from joint accounts to a third party, and procedures for requesting DNA testing. Attached are 2 initial pieces of evidence. I want to proceed lawfully and quietly until I have a complete file. Thank you." The send button turned gray. I rested my forehead against the back of my hand. Outside the clinic window, Boston glowed like a chessboard, each lit square a story no one else knows. On the desk, the Justice Plan notebook lay open. I added a new line. Day of Betrayal. 2. The first lie has been recorded. The distance between pity and complicity is just one excuse. I turned off the lights. In the dark, I heard something faint, the sound of trust falling to the bottom of my heart, and I knew, from this moment on, every road would lead to the truth. I barely slept that night. I lay curled on the small sofa in my clinic office, listening to the rain tapping on the roof and the wind slipping through the window frame. At first light, I brewed a strong black coffee, opened my laptop, and began combing through our joint account. Michael still believed I was in California. He had no idea I was less than 10 kilometers away, here in Cambridge, working on a plan taking shape. In the transaction history, a long list of unusual expenses appeared, like puzzle pieces I'd never seen before. Maple Leaf Elementary tuition, $3,800. Kids Planet Toy Store, $215. Happy Moments Birthday Photo Studio, $640. All notes repeated one name, Lisa. I opened my notebook and began building a timeline. Left column for transaction dates, right column for the excuses Michael had given. Business trips. September 12th. White teddy bear. Meeting investor in New York. November 4th. Maple Leaf tuition. Trip to Dallas. December 21st. Birthday photo shoot. Year-end meeting in Chicago. Each line matched chillingly. For 4 years, every night I stayed up saving the lives of helpless creatures. He was raising another family. With the money I earned. Near noon, my phone buzzed. A reply from Mildred Harper, the lawyer I had emailed the night before. Michelle, I've reviewed your materials. This is a clear case of infidelity and financial abuse. Do not confront him yet. Keep gathering evidence, statements, transfers, invoices, every expense. I recommend preparing a divorce petition and a DNA test request. Stay calm, keep him unaware. Justice takes time, but we will get it. I read the email 3 times, then typed back. Understood. I'll gather more over the next few days. He won't suspect a thing until it's too late. 30 minutes later, I sent Michael a short message, setting the next piece in motion. I'm back in Boston. Tired, but okay. I think I'll stay home for a few days before returning to work. Within 5 minutes, he replied, So happy to hear that. I'll come home early tonight. I want to make things right, Michelle. I looked at the screen. A faint smile crossed my face. He still thought I'd just arrived. He had no idea I'd seen everything. That evening, Michael came home earlier than usual. He brought tulips, the flowers I used to love, but now only felt like a chokehold. He smiled, wrapped his arms around me from behind. His cologne hadn't changed, familiar enough to make my chest ache. I'm sorry I haven't been more attentive, he whispered. You've been so tired. What if we took a weekend in Maine? I turned to him, smiling lightly, voice calm as air. Sounds nice. I could use a break, too. He took my hand, looked deep into my eyes, and I saw a man who could act down to the last detail. I only nodded. I had to pretend. Mildred's advice echoed. Don't confront him without enough evidence. While he showered, I opened my phone, captured the latest bank statement, and emailed it to Mildred. In the notes, I typed, This month shows a new $5,200 transfer to account HM. Coincides with Maple Leaf tuition. Likely Tiffany Morgan. I saved a copy, turned off the screen. Michael stepped out of the bathroom, hair still damp, wearing that familiar half-smile. The smile that once made me love him, and now left me hollow. Thank you for believing in me, he said. I promise, everything will be okay. I only nodded. That night, while he slept, I lay still, phone glowing under the covers, and wrote one more line in the justice plan. He says he loves me with words. But he pays for another love. And money doesn't lie. Outside the window, Boston's rain returned. In the soft yellow glow of the lamp, I looked at the man lying beside me, and knew that from now on, every breath he took was part of my plan. 3 days later, Michael told me to dress up for his firm's fundraiser, a high-profile event for major investors in the financial sector. He said it was a chance for us to show up as a couple again after such a busy time. And I understood instantly. He needed the mask of a happy marriage. I chose a fitted long black dress, paired with the ivory silk shawl he'd gifted me for our 3rd anniversary. Everything was curated, from outfit to smile. As we stepped into the grand lobby of the Fairmont Copley, hundreds of crystal glasses sparkled under golden chandeliers, soft jazz weaving between murmured conversations. He placed his hand on my back and whispered, "You've always been the best part of my life." I smiled faintly. A good liar always sweetens the blade. The event began. Michael mingled with groups of guests, shaking hands, laughing, proudly introducing me. "This is Michelle, my biggest supporter through every step of my career." Everyone looked at us like a perfect couple. I smiled politely, listening quietly, feeling the invisible cracks beneath the polished surface. And then I saw her. Tiffany, in a pale violet dress, her hair softly curled, wearing a silver star brooch. She entered the hall like a guest of honor, name badge in hand. "Tiffany Morgan, community education consultant." I nearly laughed. Consultant? She had just been promoted in Michael's new narrative, his sponsored project. Michael saw her, and for a split second, their eyes met. Something electric passed between them, long enough for me to recognize a look he never gave me. She nodded. He gave a subtle nod back. But just minutes later, they clinked glasses and exchanged a warm smile, the kind shared by two people who've known more than wine. I held my champagne glass, stepped toward the back of the hall, and gently opened my purse. Beneath tissues and lipstick, my phone was recording. I aimed the camera in their direction, pretending to check messages while it captured every second of Michael and Tiffany's interaction, the smile of two people who knew exactly who they were deceiving. I didn't drink another drop. I just stood there, watching, reminding myself, sometimes justice doesn't come from courtrooms, but from the moments people think no one's watching. When the event ended, Michael held my hand, flashes going off around us. "Thank you for being with me tonight," he said. I answered softly, "That's what a wife's supposed to do, right?" He nodded, not realizing that sentence was double-edged. That night, after he fell asleep, I pulled out my phone, plugged it in, and replayed the 2-minute video. In the glowing light of the ballroom, Michael and Tiffany's faces were clear. Their eyes, their distance, their smiles, all spoke the truth. I clipped a short segment, emailed it to Mildred with a brief note. First piece of evidence. The screen blinked. Sent successfully. I stared at those words for a long time, then closed the laptop. Outside the window, city lights reflected on the glass, casting my shadow back at me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I was coming back, not as a wife, but as the woman rewriting her own justice. The next morning, I arrived at Mildred's office in downtown Boston. A light rain was falling, mist veiling Beacon Street like a gray curtain. I walked in, carrying the USB drive with the footage from last night's fundraiser. Mildred was waiting in her small office full of divorce files, her gaze firm yet full of empathy. I sat down, my hands still cold, but my voice steady. "I'm ready now, Mildred." "Enough is enough." She nodded, plugged the USB in, and watched the short video. The glow of the screen lit up her stern face. After a few silent seconds, she said slowly, "This is more than clear. We'll begin divorce proceedings immediately, and I want you to request a DNA test to confirm that child is Michael's. If so, he can be charged with concealing a dependent and financial misrepresentation. I listened to every word, like hearing the war drums at the start of a true battle. That same morning, Mildred helped me file the official divorce petition with the Suffolk County Court. The packet was over 10 pages long, with all evidence attached: bank statements, transfers, receipts, the video. I signed my name at the bottom, my pen shaking slightly, but the stroke resolute. That afternoon, Mildred contacted the Massachusetts Child Support Enforcement Agency, reporting suspicions of Michael hiding a child, an act subject to civil charges and severe penalties. I sat across from her, watching each fax go out, my heart pounding yet strangely relieved. Every sheet sent peeled back another layer of his mask. But Mildred knew that to win, I'd need more than paperwork, visual evidence. She referred me to Joseph Turner, a private investigator she'd worked with on high-stakes financial divorce cases. That afternoon, we met at a small cafe near the Charles River. Joseph was in his 40s, tall, quiet, eyes sharp as blades. After my brief summary, he asked only one question: "What level of evidence are you after? Suspicion or certainty?" I answered clearly: "Certainty and legal." 2 days later, I received an email from Joseph. Subject line: "Initial observations." He wrote concisely, with attached photos and a detailed report. Michael left his office at least 3 times this week during lunch, around 12:10 to 1:45 p.m. He drove to Riverview Place Apartments in Somerville, where Tiffany Morgan resides. He parked in the garage and went up to apartment 307. He stayed about an hour and a half, then returned to work by 2 p.m., as if coming back from a client lunch. I opened each photo. Undeniable. Michael stepping out of his car, holding a paper bag from a nearby bakery, smiling as Tiffany opened the door. Pictures of them leaving the unit together, her walking him to the parking lot, brushing his shoulder before he walked away. Joseph concluded, "The visits are consistent every Tuesday and Thursday." This constitutes repeated infidelity. I stared at the images, no longer in pain, only cold and resolved. The man who said he was meeting clients had been spending lunch breaks cheating. I saved all the photos to the Justice Plan folder, carefully numbered. That night, I sent them all to Mildred, along with this note: "Mildred, here is direct evidence. He meets Tiffany twice a week during lunch. Enough for court." Her response came almost instantly: "Good. I'll prepare the supplemental file. From now on, Michelle, every step you take is protected by law. We won't fight with pain anymore, but with evidence." I looked out the window. The Boston sunset reflected off the Charles River, staining the sky red. I breathed deep and whispered to myself, "He once used time to hide his lies. I'll use every minute now to bury them." The next morning, Michael left early as usual. He kissed my cheek, said he had an important meeting. I simply nodded, silently watching him fade out the door. Once I heard his car pull away, I reached for my phone. I opened my contacts, saw his name on screen, then called. My voice was so calm, it surprised even me. "Can we meet this afternoon?" "At River Bean Cafe, near your office. I want to talk." There was a pause on his end. Then he replied, as gently as ever, "Sure. But why not wait till tonight and talk at home? You just got back. I want to cook dinner for you." I smiled, keeping my tone flat. "No need. I prefer talking outside. Too many things at home keep us from saying what we really mean." He hesitated a second, then agreed. "All right." I want us to talk seriously, too. That afternoon, I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a window seat where sunlight streamed across my steaming cappuccino. I sat quietly, opened my bag, double-checked the evidence on my phone. When Michael walked in, wearing a white shirt and navy tie, the same smile on his face, it was as if nothing had ever happened. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that once thrilled me, now cold as glass. We sat. He talked about new projects, maybe starting his own fund. I let him speak, let him settle into his polished husband role. When he paused, I slid my phone across the table, opened a video file. On screen appeared a dim shot of our living room. Yellow lights, a birthday cake, and a child's voice rang clearly. "Daddy?" Then Michael's voice, tender and sweet to the bone. "I'll always be here." Michael froze. He stared at the screen, then at me, face draining of color. "Michelle, when did you film this?" I didn't answer. I set down my cup, voice low and steady. "That night. When you blew out candles with another woman's child. In my house." He swallowed hard, tried to steady his tone. That was Lisa. You know her. Tiffany asked me to watch her sometimes. I said that to comfort the girl. I didn't want her feeling unloved. Michelle, she doesn't deserve to be hurt." I laughed, but it came out sharp as broken glass. "Doesn't deserve to be hurt? You're saying that to me? Do you know what truly doesn't deserve pain, Michael?" A wife's trust. I took an envelope from my bag, unfolded documents. Teddy bear receipt dated September 12th, Maple Leaf tuition statements, transfer proof to Tiffany Morgan, and the photo from the fundraiser where he toasted with her in the hotel lobby. I laid each one on the table, voice even and cold. "Here's the tuition you paid. Here's the toy you bought on the day you said you were in New York. And here, the moral man, toasting with his mistress at a company event." He couldn't speak. I saw his throat twitch, hands shaking as he stared at the evidence. Finally, he lowered his head, voice rough. "I'm sorry. Michelle, I messed up. I was stupid, cowardly. I didn't know it would go this far. It's all my fault, mine alone." I looked at him, no longer the man who was once my whole world, but just someone who had lost the game he rigged. I said softly, eyes fixed on my cooling coffee, "You have 24 hours to leave the house. After that, my attorney will contact you. Don't try to appeal to emotion anymore, Michael. I have proof, and I have the law." He looked up, eyes drained, not angry, just a man who'd lost everything. I stood, placed cash on the table, and said quietly, without looking back, "Thank you. Because of you, I learned how to trust myself." I walked out, leaving behind a man bowed in silence. Outside, the wind stirred, coffee scent mingling with autumn leaves. I opened my phone and texted Mildred. "It's done." He confessed, ready for the next step. I turned off the screen, stood to leave. But just as my hand touched the door, Michael's voice called from behind, no longer trembling or regretful, but cold and bitter. "If you think you can take me down that easily, you're wrong. I'll hire the best attorney in Boston. That house, your clinic, they're marital assets. You won't keep anything." I paused a second, turned to face him. His eyes no longer held guilt, but fear of losing control. I replied softly, but loud enough, "Then try me, Michael. This time, the law is on my side." I turned, pushed open the door, and stepped out. Behind me, his heavy breathing dissolved into the cold wind. Outside, Boston was foggy, the streetlights reflecting off the Charles like 1,000 mirrors, revealing a woman who had just stopped being afraid. That evening, the house was eerily quiet. After the confrontation at the cafe, Michael hadn't dared return. I sat in front of my computer, with only the ticking wall clock and the soft rain brushing against the window as company. I opened the browser, the cursor blinking in the search box. Boston Women's Forum, Marriage and Family section. I logged in with an anonymous account named The Vet's Wife. With trembling fingers, I typed, not with rage, but with the stillness of someone who had seen everything. My husband is a successful man in finance. He speaks of ethics, trust, and family, all while secretly betraying me for 4 years with the woman he called his best friend. They have a child together, while I was still clinging to the belief that our marriage could be saved. I'm not looking for pity. I just want other women to know, when a man says he's meeting a client, sometimes he's just with someone else. I reread the post, then hit submit. Within minutes, hundreds of views. An hour later, over 5,000. Comments poured in. Women sharing similar stories, words of support, others outraged on my behalf. One wrote, "Is he with Brightfield Capital? I heard of a CEO who preaches ethics but lives a lie." Another chimed in, "Sounds like Michael R., always speaking at those investment seminars." If it's him, what a fraud I didn't reply. I just watched the comments scroll by, feeling both chilled and liberated. I didn't need to name him. The truth was speaking for itself. By morning, the post had spread to Twitter and Reddit. From an anonymous story, it had become a hot topic in Boston's finance circles. Memes mocking the hashtag #ThePerfectCEO flooded timelines. Quotes from Michael's talks on professional integrity were turned into jokes. By noon, I got a message from Tiffany. "Michelle, please. Stop. I'm about to be suspended. The school is investigating. Lisa is still a child. She'll be hurt. Please think of her." I read it, then locked my phone. I didn't hate Tiffany, but I owed her nothing. They chose this path. I was just shining a light where they tried to keep it dark. That same afternoon, Mildred called. Her voice was calm but pleased. "Michelle, the news is spreading faster than I thought. Brightfield's investors are demanding an internal audit. They want to know how much Michael spent on undocumented expenses. Shall I submit the bank statements?" I replied quietly, "Do it. I want it all out in the open." That night, Michael came home. His shirt wrinkled, tie loose. He threw his keys on the table, eyes frantic. "What did you do, Michelle?" "The office is a mess. Investors are threatening to pull out. Do you want me to lose everything?" I looked at him, expression steady, unshaken. "No, Michael. I didn't do anything. You did." 4 years ago, he fell silent, bit his lip, and walked out. The door clicked shut, leaving only his fading cologne in the air. I sat down, opened my anonymous post. Over 12,000 shares. No names needed. All of Boston knew. I opened the Justice Plan notebook and wrote one more line. Sometimes, to expose darkness, you just have to turn on a small light. The glow of the screen lit my face, no longer that of a betrayed wife, but of a woman who had made the liar tremble before the truth. 2 days after the post, I did nothing more. I didn't need to. Once the truth had been revealed, it found its own way forward. I only took calls from Mildred and waited to see how justice would unfold. That morning, Mildred called me from her office. Her voice was firm, tinged with quiet satisfaction. "The court has granted the DNA testing request, Michelle. Preliminary results will be in within 2 weeks. Also, the Child Support Services Agency has issued a temporary freeze on Michael's personal accounts for financial obligation verification. I've also submitted the statements you gave me. The transfers to Tiffany will definitely be investigated." I listened, filled with a strange calm. "Thank you, Mildred." At last, the law is beginning to speak. That afternoon, I stopped by Maple Leaf Elementary, where Tiffany teaches. I wasn't there to confront her, only to leave an anonymous envelope in the principal's mailbox. Inside was a printed copy of the now viral article, along with a handwritten note. A teacher at this school may be involved in an ethical scandal that could affect the institution's reputation. No signature was needed. I just walked away, quietly, as if I had never been there. That evening, the first message arrived. An acquaintance from the parent group wrote to me, "Tiffany got called in by the principal." "She's panicking. Might be suspended." I read it without trembling. I wasn't seeking revenge. I simply stopped protecting a lie. The next morning, the media started picking up the story. The headline on Boston Finance Weekly read, "Brightfield Capital faces ethical crisis. Senior fund manager accused of misconduct and personal scandal." Beneath it was a picture of Michael in a suit, smiling confidently at an investment conference. The comments below the article were merciless. Ethical investing, hypocritical living, the paradox of modern Wall Street. If he couldn't keep his wife's trust, how can he manage our money? That afternoon, Mildred sent me a photo of an internal memo from Brightfield Capital. "The board has decided to suspend Mr. Michael R., senior portfolio manager, pending audit and internal investigation." I read the words "suspend from duty" twice, then smiled. "Finally, someone is holding him accountable," I whispered. That night, Tiffany sent me another message, longer than any before. "Michelle, you've won. I've lost everything. Please, I'm begging you, stop. Lisa's not at fault. I just want to raise my child in peace." I stared at the screen, not responding. There was no need to. Society, public opinion, and justice were finishing what I had started. When I closed the laptop, I reopened my Justice Plan notebook. The final line of the day, I wrote in small, steady script. When justice begins to work, I don't need to scream. I just need to stand still and let the truth speak for me. Outside, the autumn wind swept through the window frame, carrying the scent of light rain and the distant echo of car horns. Boston had never felt so peaceful, at least not to me. 3 weeks later, with the scandal still making headlines, I decided it was time to close the chapter. Not with silence, but with truth made public. I booked a table at the Grand Ivy, a restaurant by the Charles River, where we once celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary. This dinner wasn't just a gathering of friends. It was my final trial, one where justice didn't lie in a judge's hands, but in the eyes of those who had once believed in us. I sent invitations to our closest mutual friends, and to both Michael and Tiffany. In the note, I kept it brief. "This is a farewell dinner. Come if you still believe in the truth." That night, the Grand Ivy banquet hall shimmered in golden light, crystal glasses glittering under chandeliers. I arrived early, wearing a long black dress, hair neatly pinned, makeup soft but sharp. When I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw the woman who cried in the dark. I saw someone who had turned pain into power. One by one, my friends arrived. The Whitleys, Jenny and Mark, a few colleagues from the vet clinic. At last, Michael walked in, Tiffany by his side, their faces tense, trying to maintain composure. I smiled and welcomed guests as if nothing had happened. As dinner neared its end, I rose gently and lifted my glass. "Thank you all for coming. Tonight, I won't say much. I just want to share one thing. The truth sometimes needs light, and tonight, I want to shine that light." The room fell silent. I signaled the tech staff. The large screen at the back lit up. The image appeared, the very video I had recorded that night in my own living room. Lisa's voice rang out, innocent and clear. "Daddy?" Then Michael's, warm and affectionate. "I'll always be here." A few gasps. Some covered their mouths. All eyes turned to Michael. But I didn't stop there. I played the DNA results Mildred had sent just yesterday. The test confirms a 99.97% probability of biological relation between Michael R. and Lisa Morgan. The banquet hall was silent. I could hear Tiffany's sharp breaths in the corner. She broke into sobs, her hand trembling as she clutched Michael's arm. He only bowed his head, his face pale. I stepped into the center of the hall, voice steady and clear. 4 years. 4 years of lies, of promises, of nights I believed you were working late. I don't need an explanation. I just want everyone to see. Justice doesn't always come from courtrooms. Sometimes it comes from ending silence. No one spoke for a few seconds. Then Jenny, who once attended our wedding, stood first. "Michelle, I believe you." Then Mark, then the Whitleys. Then one by one, everyone stood, slowly but resolutely. "There's no room for betrayal in our circle." Tiffany buried her face, tears soaking the napkin. Michael still didn't lift his head, hands clenched tightly as if holding on to the last shred of pride. I looked at them one last time and nodded. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. From now on, I hope you two live truthfully with each other, the way I've lived truthfully with myself." I walked out, leaving behind heavy stares, whispered words, and a truth freshly unveiled under the glamorous lights. The breeze off the Charles River brushed gently past, carrying a soft chill. I stood on the steps, breathing deep. Behind me, an old chapter was collapsing. Ahead, a new one was opening. No more lies, only light and freedom. 3 days after the evening at the Grand Ivy, the storm officially broke. The news spread faster than Michelle had imagined. On financial media sites, bold headlines emerged. Brightfield Capital under internal investigation amid ethics scandal and alleged embezzlement. At the Brightfield office, the tension was palpable. David Clark, a longtime partner and head of auditing, discovered irregularities in spending. In an internal email, he wrote, "A sum of $120,000 was withdrawn from the contingency fund 3 months ago, without valid invoices. Upon review, the transaction was made by Michael R., labeled as Maple Leaf Community Project Support. But David didn't take long to connect Maple Leaf to the elementary school where Tiffany Morgan teaches. He immediately contacted Mildred, Michelle's attorney, to verify the connection. When cross-referenced with Michelle's evidence, tuition receipts, bank transfers, gifts, and aligned expenditures, everything became alarmingly clear. Michael had embezzled company funds to support his mistress and their child. Mildred forwarded the entire case file to Brightfield's Audit Division and the Massachusetts Financial Oversight Committee. Within 48 hours, Brightfield Capital released a public statement. "We have terminated Mr. Michael R., Senior Portfolio Manager, for serious breaches of ethical and financial conduct. His personal accounts have been frozen pending investigation. Authorities are proceeding with prosecution. As for Tiffany Morgan, after her suspension, she was officially dismissed from Maple Leaf Elementary for seriously damaging the school's reputation." She packed her desk in silence, her face gaunt, while colleagues avoided eye contact as she walked the hallway. Meanwhile, Michelle visited her lawyer's office. She signed the divorce papers, the final page ending 8 years of marriage. The court awarded her full ownership of the Cambridge home and the Harbor Light Animal Clinic. Michael didn't contest. Perhaps he knew he no longer had the right. A few days later, The Child Support Agency issued its official ruling. Mr. Michael R. is ordered to reimburse all past expenses and provide ongoing financial support for the child Lisa Morgan. Per Massachusetts state law, Mildred informed Michelle that the case had been referred to the Bureau of Financial Investigations for embezzlement and fraud. The proposed sentence could reach up to 6 years in prison. That evening, Michelle returned home, sitting in the empty kitchen. The soft yellow light fell across the wooden table, once the setting for dinners, stories, and laughter. She opened her laptop and read the latest headline. Former Brightfield Fund manager faces embezzlement charges. Estimated losses at $120,000. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. No more tears, no more shaking. Only peace, the kind found by those who have weathered the storm and remained standing. Justice begins with truth, she whispered. The wind whispered through the window, carrying the chill of Boston's November air. Michelle looked outside. The sky still dark, but in the distance, streetlights shimmered on the surface of the Charles River, sparkling like a quiet promise that even the deepest darkness must one day give way to light. 5 weeks later, I sat in my new office, a small but sunlit space, where the nameplate had just gone up a few weeks ago. Phoenix Divorce Solutions. The name Phoenix was not just a symbol of rebirth. It was my story. Someone once burned by betrayal, who had learned to rise from her own ashes. Mildred, the woman who had stood by me when everything collapsed, was now my official partner. We started this firm to help women reclaim their financial rights and dignity through legal counsel, asset management, and psychological therapy. Every day, I met new faces. A middle-aged woman clutching bank statements her husband had controlled. A young mother holding her child, her eyes lost but resilient. I saw myself in them. Women who once thought justice was a luxury until they learned how to claim it. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at the Women's Financial Freedom Conference, an event bringing together hundreds of women, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and social activists. As I stood on stage, the spotlight on me, I saw eyes looking up, expectant, empathetic, trusting. I began. There was a time I believed justice meant making others pay. But then I realized true justice is when you get yourself back, when pain no longer controls you, but becomes the strength to lift others. The applause was long and warm. Mildred smiled from the front row, nodding gently, a silent blessing. 2 months later, I heard Michael had been sentenced to 6 years in prison for embezzlement and financial fraud. He was stripped of all authority in the investment world, lost his reputation, lost everything he once took pride in. As for Tiffany, after being fired from the school, she moved back in with her parents in suburban Worcester, unable to find new work. I didn't feel joy, nor sadness. It was simply a natural consequence, the result of choices they had made. As for me, I returned to the simple life I had once forgotten. On weekends, I visited the Animal Rescue Center in Cambridge, where it all began. I adopted 3 abandoned animals, an old Labrador, a limping corgi, and a black cat named Midnight. I cared for them, played with them, and sometimes smiled at the thought that by saving these small lives, I was saving myself. In the late afternoon, as the sun dipped behind flaming red trees, I sat by the window, watching people pass by. A hot cup of tea on the table, 3 animals curled up beneath my feet. I thought to myself, justice doesn't end with punishment. It ends with peace. And for me, peace had begun. On an early winter morning, the season's first snow fell gently on the glass roof of the Cambridge Rescue Center. I stopped by as usual, But today, a special soul caught my attention. A small golden-haired dog, blind, yet still lifting its head at every sound. They said it had been rescued from the wildfires in California the year before, during the same time I was there on a work trip. They hadn't named it yet, but I simply smiled and said, "Her name is Hope." As I held Hope in my arms, I felt my heart beat with a new rhythm, no longer heavy, but light as breath. She trembled in my hands, seeking warmth, and I realized I had once been just like her, lost in darkness, guided only by the feeling in my chest. I brought Hope home, settling her beside the 3 other little creatures. They curled around her, as if they understood that here, no one had anything left to fear. That afternoon, while reorganizing my office, I found a small box high on the shelf. Inside was the silver necklace I had once planned to give Michael for our 8th anniversary. I held it for a long moment, then hung it on the wall beside my desk. In the dim light, the silver glinted like a quiet reminder. Beneath it, I carved into a wooden plaque. Loyalty belongs only to honesty. That night, I opened my justice plan notebook again. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, evidence, statements, old tears, all now lying silent before me. I turned to the last page and wrote a single line, short but enough to close the journey. I didn't lose everything. I only lost an illusion. I closed the notebook and placed it on the shelf. Outside, the wind brushed past the window, carrying the sounds of ordinary life, traffic, laughter, Hope softly barking in her sleep. And I knew my life had truly begun again. 3 months later, on a Sunday morning, I took Hope for a walk in the public garden. The sky was clear, the sunlight dancing on the lake. As I fastened Hope's leash near a bench, a voice softly called from behind. "Michelle?" I turned. Tiffany stood there, gaunt, her face thinner, her eyes both shy and uncertain. Beside her was Lisa, now 5, her blonde hair in loose curls. The child smiled at me, innocent, untouched by the mistakes of adults. Lisa ran forward and pointed at Hope. "You know my daddy?" I knelt down, gently smiled, and brushed her hair. "I used to know someone, but now I know peace." Tiffany stood still, tears running silently down her cheeks. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I lost everything, and I know you never wanted that. I just wanted to say thank you for not destroying me the way I did to you." I looked at her for a long moment, my voice soft as the breeze. "I never wanted anyone to suffer, Tiffany. I just needed peace. The rest, each of us has to face what we've sown." Tiffany nodded, took Lisa's hand, and walked away. I watched them go. No hatred, no pity, only a sadness light as dust in the sun. That afternoon, my sister Rebecca called. "You know Michael's working as a waiter now, downtown. Tiffany's tutoring privately." "Life has its ways of teaching people," I answered softly, a faint smile on my lips. "No one needs to suffer, Rebecca. I just needed peace. That's enough." I looked at Hope, curled up by my feet, and thought, maybe forgiveness isn't forgetting. Maybe it's finally laying down what's become too heavy to carry. A few months later, I was invited to speak on the popular podcast, Women Who Rise. That day's topic, Women and Rebirth After Betrayal. I sat before the microphone, warm yellow lights shining down, the host's voice calm and kind. "Michelle, if you could say just one thing to the women listening right now, what would it be?" I smiled, looking straight into the recorder. Betrayal doesn't end you. It only ends the illusion of who you trusted. The only thing that truly ends a woman is when she stops believing in herself. The room was silent for a few seconds. Then the host gently placed a hand on my shoulder and nodded. Final scene. That evening, I walked Hope along the banks of the Charles River. The sunset glowed warm orange, mirrored on the water. Hope walked slowly beside me, ears low, cautious but steady, like me, step by step, finding direction in a new world. The breeze passed by, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and the distant chime of church bells. I looked up and smiled, not because the past was gone, but because it no longer defined me. Justice begins with truth. Peace begins when you forgive yourself. The screen faded to black, leaving only the reflection of sunset on water and the image of Michelle and Hope continuing their walk toward the light. If this story touched you, please click like so more women can find it. And don't forget to subscribe, so together we can spread real journeys where justice isn't just a verdict, but the peace we reclaim for ourselves.